Back before I had children, I would often spend whole days not speaking to a soul. I lived alone. I was in grad school. I could spend a day reading, working in the library, writing, or just hanging around without necessarily hearing anyone else on earth say my name and without speaking anyone else's. Especially in the days of email and text, business could be done without talking. Now, I know that many of you won't believe me, but in my heart of hearts, I'm an introvert. I loved days like that. To this moment, I long for days like that. I find it invigorating to be without human contact. So I remember laughing in the early stages of the quarantine when I kept reading things online about how we should check on our extrovert friends because they might be struggling. And I would think, sure, but being an introvert locked inside with 5 other people is hardly a day at the beach. The reality is that introvert or extrovert, isolation has been a challenge. And it has made plain things I never realized before. For example, I've had plenty of meaningful interaction with the people closest to me, my parents and my children. And I have predictably been irritable because I've lacked enough alone time to rejuvenate in meaningful ways. But I never guessed how much I would miss the casual interactions of life. So joking with the cashier at the grocery store or making small talk on the bus, running into acquaintances and offering friendly hellos. Those little chance encounters for me have been really missing. I've missed those. There are some things that we could have predicted for all of us, right? There are folks whose work lives shifted and they've experienced a loss of a sense of purpose or identity. There are those of us whose family interactions have had to shift drastically, and we might be feeling that those relationships are different or unsteady in unpleasant ways. All of us are under the intense stressors and trauma of a life drastically changed while facing what feels like a great deal of unknowns. Many of us are confronting overloads on our brains as we attempt to track and maintain through online channels, work, family, and social relationships. Many of those are maintained through their own natural rhythms usually, but now require all sorts of planning, much more work. We may find ourselves then lacking focus and concentration, our attention spans diminished, our memories impaired. We might be struggling to make decisions. There are many ill effects of intense stress, many ill effects of trauma, and many ill effects of soul-changing times, and we are in soul-changing times. A long time ago, not quite 20 years, but a long time ago, a divinity school colleague of mine shared with me a piece of research-based information, and I say it that way because I admit to you, I have no idea where he learned it, and it's entirely possible that it was anecdotal and not from a peer-reviewed study, but it rang true for me, and I want to share it with you today. The tidbit he passed on was that humans typically need 7 significant touches a day to feel secure and loved and grounded and well in the world. Those touches might be different for different people. One person's hug is another person's high five. And of course, there are those among us who don't thrive on touch at all, but for many of us, this is an area of challenge that we haven't talked much about, but that is very real. Many of us have had our worlds of touch changed in the time of physical distance. For those of us who have touch as a primary way of expressing and receiving support, that loss is painful and critically important when it comes to mental health. Think for a moment about how many little ways touch used to come into play in the course of a typical day. Hugs with family or friends, handshakes, even the feeling of standing or sitting close enough to another person to feel their bodily presence on Sunday mornings or on the subway. All of these physical, tangible ways that we used to be reminded that we were not alone in the world. Jules Evans, a writer in the field of psychology, notes that this moment has made plain a deeper problem. Evans writes, COVID didn't just exacerbate a pre-existing mental health crisis, it massively exacerbated a pre-existing touch deficit. He argues that in our Western culture, we have leaned so hard into a sense of individualism and independence that we've created this expectation of living alone and functioning alone and bubbles around each other that can lead to lives of loneliness lived without touch. He goes on to note that, quote, when we are hugged, or even when we give hugs, we activate a very old mammalian mind-body circuit called the parasympathetic nervous system. We switch from the flight or fight mode of stress and vigilance and into the tend and befriend response. Our blood pressure falls and breathing slows. Adrenaline levels drop in our bloodstream, endorphins and oxytocin are released, our stomach starts to digest, and our immune system receives a boost. We relax. The defensive walls of our ego soften. We allow ourselves to blur into the other, to melt into the hug. We put down the weight of our lonely self for a moment and rest in the tribe, the primate troop. The hug is the ancient primal mechanism for emotional regulation, trauma recovery, and social bonding. So Evans is noting that touch, our physical body in space interacting with other physical bodies in space, contributes to our understanding of who and what we are and where we belong. He goes on in this particular piece to tell his own story of isolation during quarantine and how hard the time he spent in solitude was. And he calls on us to create something new on the other side of the pandemic, a world with more touch, of course, where it is wanted, a world with a deeper understanding of the need for human contact, an understanding that might inform everything from the way families cohabitate or not, to what we do in prison systems. And of course, for right now, he encourages a variety of ways to achieve that sense of your alive physical body in space. If you're quarantining with others or with pets, get those touches in. Hugs, handholds, whatever works for you, but make a conscious effort to get 7 in a day for 1 week and see what happens. That's my challenge. If you are living with a pet or another person, 7 significant touches a day for the next week, and then let us know what happens. But then not all of us are quarantining with others. Not all of us have pets. Evan says, though, if you are alone, there are still ways to remind your body that it isn't alone. Open a window and listen to the birds sing. Feel the sunshine on your face. If you can get outside and feel the earth in your palm, do, or go out in the rain and the wind. Let your skin experience the sensations that remind it is alive, it is in space with others, with living things, with all living things. And maybe now is the time to consider condensing your quarantine experience. If you've been alone, perhaps there's a family member or friend you could begin to quarantine, yes, this is a word, quarantine with, so that your circle expands a little and you can experience touch. Obviously, only do this if it can be done safely, if you've all been quarantining carefully and you can be sure of each other's caution moving forward. Because here's the thing, isolation is hard. I don't think there's anyone who would dispute that. And although things seem to be reopening, isolation isn't over. I know there's a celebration coming in Ridgewood for the easing of restrictions and the reopening of life to some extent, but we can't just go back to normal. We can't go back to normal because we don't really know where we are in this pandemic. We don't know what's coming next, except we know that if we open recklessly, we'll be right back into the major and extreme lockdown we've had. We can't go back to normal because it isn't safe to go back to normal. But I will say this, all throughout this crisis, I have also felt that I don't want to go back to normal. I don't know if you've been feeling that too. There are certain things I miss. Silence, casual encounters, touch from those outside my immediate family, but I don't want to go back to normal as we knew it. Because if normal means going back to the systemic and systematic oppression of Black people, if normal means treating the indigenous peoples of this land as if they were guests here, if normal means allowing toxic visions of masculinity to create generations of men who exploit, if normal means feeling okay about shootings at gay nightclubs where 49 people's lives were taken in one night, if normal means allowing children of this nation to grow up in such poverty that they don't know where their next meal is coming from, if normal means treating the earth like our plaything, if normal means not living up to the promise of our human sacredness and the possibility of the highest ideals of this nation, then I don't want to go back to normal. I want to see my friends. I want to hug my neighbors. I want to hug all of you. I want to feel the closeness of our community. I want my children to be able to go back to school. I want to stop worrying about every touch of every object and every breath from someone else. I want all those things. I want the stress to ease. I want the soul to mend. I want to feel like myself, and I want the people around me to feel like themselves. But I want a new normal. I want a normal where world community is prized, where safety and security, health and love, support and embrace are given to all people. I want a normal where opportunities actually are equal for all of us. I want a normal where women live without fear of harm. I want a normal where children are cared for and protected and families of all kinds are supported. I want a normal where Indigenous lives, Black lives, LGBTQ lives are protected, valued, honored, and celebrated. I want a normal where it doesn't matter how a person dresses or what gender they are, they know love and kindness and compassion. I want a normal where the ideals we hold dear, justice, mercy, equality, compassion, liberty, and love are the ideals that everyone strives toward in every decision we make, every act we engage in. The good news is that all the data we have about isolation suggests that it might be possible to create a new normal. In studies of astronauts and other scientists who have spent prolonged periods in small group isolation, researchers have noted 4 stages. In a piece from late April identifying which stage Australia was in at the time, James Purtill quotes Dr. Kimberly Norris, who says that there is an initial point where there is panic buying and confusion, and then a honeymoon period where it feels novel and different to stay at home. But then there's a third quarter. Quote, time grows sludgy. The days blur into the nights and the weekdays into the weekends. You're no longer telling people you'll learn Italian. Then there's a fourth stage, the stage of return. But that third quarter of isolation, according to studies, is the hardest. It's marked by depression, by cliquishness, by worry and fights, and a general diminishing of personal relationships. Irritability gets sky high in the third quarter. With this current crisis, it's very hard to know where we are. That third stage is called the third stage because invariably it occurs about 2/3 or 3/4 of a way through a mission that involves isolation. So month 4 of a 6-month mission, month 8 of a 12-month mission, but we don't know a timeline for this particular mission. So we don't literally know what time we're in, but for me, time has certainly gotten blurry. Irritability can be high. And the hint of a promise of reopening and the start of it in some places sure as heck makes me feel like we're in the third quarter. And this could end up being the hardest moment yet for many reasons. Reopening feels close, but could be taken away at any moment. We might have developed a false sense of security and it might create laxness that actually causes a spike. And so we might not be as close to the fourth quarter as we think, and that can be hard to bear. But here's what I found comforting in Purtill's article. About half of the folks who isolate in the Arctic and nearly all astronauts who isolate on missions to space want to do it again. Despite how hard isolation is, they want to do it again because overall, something good happens. According to Dr. Norris, quote, those who have been through a period of isolation value the experience for what it has taught. They have a better idea of their personal values and they're more committed to acting on them. When people have space to sit back and think, it allows them to figure out what's important to them. So this moment feels pregnant with possibility. The studies show that people come out the other side of isolation more engaged in their relationships, more meaningfully engaged in their communities. And men become more social in the wake of isolation, and women more sure of themselves. Good can come on the other side of these 4 stages of isolation. So whether we're in the 3rd quarter or beginning to come into the 4th, I'm in the business right now of imagining and working, and I invite you into that with me. Imagining what that new normal might be, what that good aftermath might be, but then also thinking about what it will take to get there. I'm wondering about what seeds we need to plant so that we can harvest change in the months to come. And today, here's what I think. I think it will take all of us sticking with isolation and distancing, even when the temptation is to stop, even when it seems like things are getting better and we can loosen up a little. Because if we move too soon, we'll be back where we began. It will take all of us finding ways to keep our souls intact as we face the struggles of this time. Soothing and mending our own souls, reaching out when we need help, feeling the sunshine on our faces, retaining our sense of our human place wherever we can. It will take all of us staying in community just as we have been, calling each other, supporting each other, showing our love for one another in the ways we can safely do right now, with calls and video chats and flowers and strawberries and cards and whatever else we can so that this community stays strong. It will take all of us remembering the good things that we want to retain from the old normal and building those up. Because the old normal wasn't all bad. And the right now normal is seeing some real potential. We're seeing demilitarization and defunding of the police. The potential outcomes of all of these demands for justice are limitless. It will take all of us not losing sight of or getting tired with fighting the bad of the old normal and the bad of right now. Because moves are still being made to diminish democracy and to eliminate rights and oppress various groups. We all have to keep our eyes open and our eyes on the prize. And more than all this, it will take communities like ours, ones that share values of love and interdependence. It will take communities like ours going out beyond ourselves to lead the way in creating a new reality that truly lives justice, mercy, equality, and love. Right now, that's what I think our call will be, to push ourselves even more to be out there, beyond our walls, helping build the world we want to see. We have to make that move from strong, beloved community here to strong, beloved community out there. I love this community. I can't wait to be in person with you again. I can't wait to shake your hands and hear your laughter and your singing voices and to hug you. And I know that time will come. And I want us all to be ready to be forces of good in that time. I want us to get there with as many of us as intact as possible. Hearts grateful for the community that has sustained us, eager to do what must be done to create a new normal. For now, though, we'll remain virtual, even for our barbecue. Penny? Wait for it. There.
Hi, this is Ed Wardell, and I want to welcome you to the 2020 USR Barbecue. This year's barbecue is virtual, certainly different than in years past, but with the same sense of hope and celebration for successfully completing a very challenging year at USR. So please, fire up your grill and celebrate as we review the year while listening to the Porch Cut Barbers. Be safe, be well, and may the force be with us all.
Hello? Hello? Hi, it's Kristen. I was just wondering, are there any burgers left? Meatloaf, of course. Or I'll take a hot dog. How about a quinoa salad? Oh, or that Jell-O mold shaped like a human brain. Thank you. Bye. Hello? Is anyone there? Hello? Is there any pizza left? Please call.
A hearty thank you to Marshall for that. In a typical year, this service would mark the end of the congregational year and a move to a more reduced summer schedule. This will not be the case so much this year. We'll continue to offer programming every week, have Sunday services just as full and vital as we have been having. We'll continue to be here for each other all throughout the summer. Whatever the challenges of this time have been for you, reach out, we are here. Whatever the struggles you face, know that the time will come, we will meet again. We will share a song, a meal, a hug, and then, as now, we will work for something brighter and better, animated by love. So may it be.